Well, my name is Mr Howell, and first of all, I'd like to thank Miss Wooten for inviting me to come. And it's a wonderful place here. As a little boy, I would come up through here on the bus, going to different places. But as I got older, I left Wilkes County and moved to California, and then joined the Navy. And then eventually love brought me back. And I was down in Greensboro, married her mother. This is my daughter, Amber.
Hi, Amber.
And I've been married 41 years to her mother. And I have a son. He's about 4 years younger than her at 34, so he's a bachelor. So his time and my time, I thought he was going to be here. I was hoping. But I did prepare a few words that I would like to say, and it is just wonderful, to be here today. My name is Effiany Howell. I'm the 11th of 12 children by Novella Carlton Howell and Reverend Montreal Howell. I'm a historian for the Carlton Howell reunion in the Thankful community, and I have been one for over 40 years. I'm the genealogist for the Thankful Church and the St. John's Baptist Church, which is in Alexander County, and members of Thankful moved to St. John in 1926 to start that church. And they were Parsons. They were more of the Parsons family, but they were Howells and Carltons also there. But then the Piney Grove Church that is in Moravian Falls, they branched off from Thankful Church in 1947, as well as in Kings Creek, the Patterson Grove Church, they started about 49, and they came into the Yadkin Valley Association. But I wanted to say all that to say that the Thankful Church started in 1879, and Thomas Carlton and his wife gave the land for Thankful Church. And so we do have that deed showing that. And that is always, that is a wonderful part of our history there. And it was like, as long as you use the land for what you're supposed to use it for, then, you can have a grant to it. So the church is always done, and they're still going. And it's a wonderful family church. And I wanted to say that the Zion Hill Baptist Church, they were the church that the former slaves came from. And we have an 1811 record where on that date that there were so many people of color who was in the church that day. So some of my ancestors were there also.
That's the one right out here when you're coming into the house.
Right.
We got married.
Yep. So it's just wonderful to have that. So that is a part of the history, but then I want to tell you just a short story. Okay, as being a genealogist, I'd go and talk to people and research, but I'd go down to Raleigh at the archives and research. And so one day I was down there and we was researching, I was researching, and I couldn't find anything. So I drove back to Boomer to my father's house, and I was telling him, well, Dad, I just been there a long time. It was just bad, I couldn't find anything. He said, well, hey, I think he could see how disappointed I was. He said, well, hey, come on, let me take you meet somebody. So we got into his car and we came over here and we met Pete. And so Dad and Pete were real good friends. They were about 3 or 4 years difference in their age. And so they started talking, and so Pete gave me an envelope, not an envelope, but a piece of paper, and it was folded up. And so he said, well, go ahead and read that. So I went and sat in the corner, and that clock in the house, that tick, tick, tick was going on. And I was reading, and as I began to read, I realized that this was my great-great-grandfather, Amos, who had been a slave that Martha Templeton had sold to Peter Sainer in 1831. And so that was just a real big thing that really touched my heart. And then after that, then I started researching and finding out more history. And so then some articles, Jewel Hubbard wrote an article, but there was other articles written. And then I do run a nonprofit called Thankful Heritage Museum. And so we started winning awards, but then we won the Nancy Susan Reynolds Award for race relations. And that story was part of the reason that I won the award. And so that was great with that. So my life has not been the same since that day. And then later on, I would find a document of 1866. Now, the Civil War was 1861 to 65. And at that time, they had slave schedules. And the only way that usually black people's names would not be listed is just the masters. And so then in 1870 was the first census that the former slaves would now be listed as heads of house and their children and their age and all. And so in 1866, all the former slaves had to go and tell how long they lived together in slavery. So we did that research, and so now we found some of the ones that come off the Thomas Carlton, and that was Isaac in Vienna, and so they told how long they lived, here, as far as slaves, as well as the same Amos I was talking about told how long that him and his wife Rebecca lived together. And then I have another great-grandparent, Barnes, and they told how long they lived. And so there was 37 families in all, and I'm researching those, and I'm writing a book about the African American history in Wilkes County. So right now, I have all the slave owners that were, it's called it the upper part and the lower part of Wilkes County. And so in Rhonda, they had some big slave places down there, Roundabout, Happy Hill, and there's some other names. But then once you get up here, well, really, for the people who know Wilkes County and know Range Sturdivant, there was a barber man. Mm-hmm. He had slaves down there, and his slaves was where the Judith Barber, who usually you hear about their history, but then you come over here with Peter Sainer and Livingston Carlton and Thomas Carlton and some of the other ones. And so there's just a lot of history. And I went to Whippoorwill. I was doing a presentation there about 3 weeks ago. And so the Daniel Boone history comes through there. And then this past Thursday, I was at Leatherwood Mountain Resort, and which is on up from Whippoorwill a little bit. So I was doing a presentation up there about the history of African Americans, because through there with Lenore and all that going up through there before they actually made Caldwell County and all that, Wilkes County ran all the way up to Watauga. And
so, a lot bigger county. It was a lot bigger county, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. So, so with that, let me say, I'd just like to say that, I was here about 5 years ago.
We didn't have it during the pandemic.
During the pandemic, And so there was a contribution to the Thankful Church, and so my father and I, we presented it to the church, and so it was greatly appreciated. And then a couple of years ago, they started a talk. Me and Miss Wooten started talking about scholarship fund. So this coming Sunday, there'll be an announcement to the Thankful Church and the Thankful community about a scholarship fund in my father's name, Reverend Montreal Howell. So we appreciate the contribution that came in, and it is just a wonderful part of history. And
Can I say something right there for you?
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
When he came here the 4 years ago, he had a deed where Peter Sainer had bought a woman slave with a child. And we think what happened, Peter Sander's wife had 2 babies who died in infancy. And so she had 2 daughters, and that one of them is our grandmother that lived. And the time that he bought that lady slave and her baby is when she was pregnant with Elizabeth, had the baby. That's our grandmother. And we think that she was bought as a wet nurse. And so I said, we may have not have gotten any material things from the slavery, well, I didn't. But anyway, but we got life. We got life. We would not have been here if it hadn't been for that woman who nursed our grandmother. And she lived. The 2 girls lived.
Well, I've never heard that story.
After she had that.
So we're going to announce the scholarship fund, and then our family got together, and then we're going to put some money toward the scholarship fund also. And I just want to say, you know, thank Ms. Wooten for everything, and you know, it's just wonderful to get to know more people and know the history. And
how are you connected to the Carltons up here? If you're related to the Moravian?
Okay, now my mother's name was Julia Novella Carlton, and her mother was a Carlton. That day I came here, Pete and my father talked about Alex Carlton.
Mm-hmm.
He said he was a slave who used to come here.
Yes.
That was my great grandfather on my mother's and my father's side. My father is a Howell, and he came off the Sherrod Howell and the James A. Howell plantation, which ran right alongside the Thomas Carlton and the Pete Sainer and Livingston Carlton. So my father's mother was Lula, and she was this Alex's daughter. And so they talked about both of them knowing him as kids. And then my mother, her mother was named Liz Carlton, and she was first cousins with Alex through there.
So how did the Sainers get your ancestors up here?
The Carlton name came from slaves from Thomas Carlton.
I know, but
That's where they came from.
how did the Sainer slave from Bethania get up here? It was his descendant to end up here some way.
Yeah, now there was a Peter Sainer who was here, a landowner here.
Yeah, that's it.
And so, but then I think he
He
came
had
from,
Amos, didn't he? He was Moravian.
Right.
And Amos is his
great grandfather.
So the one that was here may have been the son of the one that was in 1831, the son of the slave.
Yeah, and we're trying to get that. I'll have that together.
Oh, you're not
soon.
sure yet? Okay.
Yeah, we'll have that together because I did find out that there is a Amos Sainer down there.
He was the last Carlton that had slaves.
The last Carlton that had slaves, and I hate I didn't bring it, but there's a slave deed with Thomas in
Thomas.
1860.
He was the last one.
Yeah.
He was the last one.
So Pete, nobody.
Well, but Livingstone is on there also, and then it's a Gordon, or there's another name that's in there also in the 1860 slave schedule. It shows that. But all that'll be in the book that I'm doing. I started June the 1st writing the book on African American history in Wilkes County. And it's going to cover all the slaves. I think we got 13 different places where slaves were, but in 1850 there was 980 slaves, and then in
Wilkes County?
in Wilkes County, there was 1,280 in 1860. So right before the Civil War was when that came out, a year before the Civil War. So there's a listing of all the owners and how many slaves each one had. John Finley was one of the biggest ones in Wilkes County. And so, you hear about Finley Department Store, Finley Park, and there. But then the Hickersons were down in Rhonda and Edwards. But then all that'll be in the book. We'll
Have to buy his book.
Yeah. But I'll be at the Wilkes County Community College on November the 4th, I believe it is. And I'll do an overview of everything that I've collected. I started June the 1st doing a 1-year research of this. And so there was a program called African Americans in Wilkes County that the Wilkes County Commissioners did. You can go to YouTube it, and then it'll cover all that history that they had then. So I'm upgrading all that history also. And
He just opened a museum in
Yeah.
in High Point.
well, and I was there presenting, but I'm still looking for a place for my museum. I'm trying. I just retired December of last year, so now I'm writing the book. But then I'm looking for a place to put my exhibit because I've been exhibiting and talking about race relations for 30 years now.
What about doing it in Wilkes County? Is anyone
Well,
you thought about that?
There's talk about it, especially the Lincoln Heights
Yeah,
in
because it
that
was such a big
area
high school.
and going over
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We got to write some
Got to
grants.
see.
We got to
Yeah.
look because Winston-Salem, we've got more money there,
Yeah.
and Greensboro and High Point
Then
than
here.
here.
Yeah.
But then it's always nice to come back home. We do have some land here, and so we're looking at moving here. My wife's from Wilkesboro, also,
Oh, okay.
and so with that, I'd like to just leave you with just a few more words, and I'll be out of your way. And when I was a little kid growing up in the 60s, there was some people who said a lot of different things. We didn't have all the social media we have now, but there was a man going around and he was telling people, I'm a bad man, said I can beat anybody, I don't care who it is. And his name was Muhammad Ali. When he beat Sonny Liston, they changed it from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali. And there was another man going around, and he was telling people that I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And so as a little kid, there's a lot of words you don't get to understand, but then when the radio was on or those 3 TV stations were on, then people say, well, be quiet, Dr. King, he's saying some words. So in 63, he came up to the Washington Monument and he did a speech. And of course he said those about his kids, but he also said that I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. And it was a long speech, and he said a lot. But then finally at the end, he said that from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghanies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California, let freedom ring. But let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. And when we do this, and when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every city and every state, then we'll be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, thank God Almighty. We're free at last. Thank you.
Amen.